Hello, everybody, and welcome into today's episode of Around the Slice. I am here today to present to you a very unique and fun show that I have very much been looking forward to, and honestly, very much been excited about, especially over the last few days. And that is today's show being my much anticipated like I promised the other day, 2024 Buffalo Bills midseason review. We are going to check in on multiple different aspects of this team and discuss multiple different topics. I won't spoil anything now, but we have a ton to discuss and talk about and touch on and whatever. So, without further ado, let's just jump right into it. First, I'm excited to kind of get for my present you with my position grades from the first half of the season, from the first 9 weeks of the season. Basically, what it's pretty self-explanatory, but in case you don't know, I'm gonna go each position from quarterback just all the way to safety down there on the defensive side of the ball, and then I'll throw in kicker and punter quickly there at the end. But I'm going to give a letter grade on a scale of an A to D. I'm not going to give out any Fs. Because I don't think any position has been just downright atrocious like an F. There's some close to it. There's a couple, two or three D's in there, but we'll get to that when I get to that. So, quarterback. Obviously, no other quarterback has played other than Mitchell Trubisky with the knee lounge, so we don't count him. But Josh Allen, I'm going to give him an A plus. Quarterback position, just Josh Allen. He absolutely gets an A plus. In my opinion, he's the leading MVP candidate right now. Lamar had a really bad loss against the Browns a couple weeks ago. Jared Goff, you could say, but I don't think he has like the passing volume, the superstar numbers like Josh Allen does, because they don't ask him to do a lot in Detroit. That's nothing against them. It's just how they play, and they're throttling teams. So anyway, I'm going to present you with this baseline stats like you're all curious to hear about, I'm sure, and then I'll explain why I give Josh Allen the quarterback position as a whole an A+. Josh Allen's stats through 9 games of the 2024 NFL season: 64% completion percentage. You would like to see that in the low 70s, maybe high 60s for a superstar caliber quarterback QB like Josh Allen, but that's about league average, 66 or 64% around there, like he is. 2001 passing yards. Don't forget the one. 2001 passing yards, 17 passing touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And those 2 interceptions, I've said it before on the specific recap shows, specifically for the last 2 games against the Seahawks. Wasn't a turnover worthy play. Amari Cooper just slipped on the top of his route. It was a quick out, 5-yard out to the sideline and slipped. And then the second one went right off of Keon Coleman's hands, and it tipped up twice for a Jalen Ramsey interception. He has 211 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. The rushing production hasn't nearly been there this year, but we'll get to that when I talk about like Joe Brady and give him a grade specifically, which I will do. But yeah, I like, it's not just the baseline stats. Those aren't some like glorious stats. I'm gonna say this right now. I think it's pretty clear and obvious that Josh Allen is by far playing the most mature brand of football he's ever played in his entire career. What I mean by that is he's obviously very efficient, but the maturity aspect, what I mean, not like off field maturity, like incidents and stuff. I mean, like the way he's just playing a very mature brand of football in game scenarios on the field. Um, on play action. He's not big play hunting. Like he's taking checkdowns on play action. Like Josh Allen taking checkdowns on play action. Like who could have ever predicted that? And he's taking what's there. Like there's been quite a few times this year, like you can see his eyes, whether it's play action or not. You could see his eyes like he wants to go downfield. He's waiting for something to develop downfield. And he's just totally content with taking the cheese, if you will. Totally content with taking us there and let trust guys to create after the catch, which they have big time. So he's been really efficient, and I'll die on this hill that he's by far playing the most mature brand of football he's played easily of his entire career. I hope I summed that up pretty well. But yeah, that's just my opinion. A plus, absolutely phenomenal. He's taking what's there and the mature aspect in game as well. And then RB, this is also an A plus. Like the starter in James Cook is absolutely phenomenal. 109 carries, 496 rushing yards, 7 rushing touchdowns. That's amazing. He only had 4 combined in his first 2 years in the league rushing before this year, just because when they get inside the 5-yard line, he doesn't have that frame to run between the tackles, if you will. And then 19 receptions for 170 receiving yards out of the backfield and 1 receiving touchdown. He's dropped a couple receiving touchdowns that he absolutely should have had, most notably against the Dolphins this past week, but that's whatever. And his touch, like James Cook, like I'm not even kidding. Like he's best in outside zone, and the Bills might be the best like zone rushing attack in the entire league right now. Just the way they could stress you with James Cook's burst and lightning style runner and improved physicality this season. And speaking of physicality, Ray Davis is like by far the most physical running back, pure rusher on this team, not including Josh Allen. His stats are 61 carries, 262 yards, 2 touchdowns, 10 receptions, also for 149 yards and 1 touchdown. He's not going to blow you with any explosive numbers and testing at the combine and stuff. I don't even think he was invited to the combine as his redemption story continues, as he was homeless as a kid and all that. But you can tell because of being homeless, he plays as a little kid. He plays with tenacity. He plays with physicality. He's grateful for every opportunity that's given to him. And then the third guy, Ty Johnson, like this goes 3 deep here, like 17 carries, 99 yards, rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, and he's chipped in with 5 receptions and 95 receiving yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. Now, I will say, instead of making Ty Johnson and Ray Davis split, just like commit to Ray Davis as the full-time clear-cut RB2, and I would like to see Ty Johnson relegated to just special teams as a 4-phase special teamer like he is now, but also just like certain blocking schemes, only like a small handful of snaps per game. But this is an A+, like top to bottom. Like this thing goes 3 deep, like the running back position, A+. Wide receiver, I wanted to give this a B+, but then I wanted to give it a B-, and that seemed a tad too harsh. So I settled in the middle, literally the middle of a B+ and B-, and I gave it a B because for the most part, that everybody eats mentality has worked. The getting guys in space and making them work after the catch has worked. Dialing up different targets at all 3 levels of field, short, intermediate, downfield, respectively. And I'll talk about each receiver now in order of production. First, Khalil Shakir has 42 receptions, 471 yards, 2 touchdowns. Now, he needs like 600 more yards to do this, give or take around there. About 600 more yards, give or take around there, like I just said, but to get over 1,000. I think he'll settle in like the 900 to 950 range. I don't think anyone. There's a couple that are going to get close, but I don't think anyone goes over 1,000 yards for the Bills this year. If anyone's going to do it, it will probably be only Khalil Shakir. But I just love Khalil Shakir. Again, I keep pounding the table for this every freaking game. In every single offseason he's been in Buffalo. He's not the most physical at the catch point. He's not the twitchiest guy. He's not a burner, but even though his speed is highly underrated and downfield ability severely underrated as well. But he's so shifty. He's so hard to tackle. He never drops anything. He literally has hands of steel. I mean, it's absurd. Josh Allen is his most trustworthy receiver, and over Dalton Kincaid, most trustworthy weapon. Period. This year, it's just. I have such a good appreciation for Khalil Shakir because he does everything at such a great level. He's an awesome blocker now. His first couple years in the league, his rookie year, he was kind of dreadful and atrocious as a blocker. Second year, it was okay last year. His third year in the league now this year in 2024, respectively it is, I should say, rather. He's become he blocks his you-know-what off, and he's become an awesome receiver. He just does all the gritty things that he's a Sean McDermott culture guy through and through. That's all I'll say. Next, Keon Coleman, 22 receptions, 417 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns. That's absurd that he has 417 receiving yards on just 22 receptions. That average is insane. Every time you need a downfield weapon, Keon's there. every time you need a guy in a contested catch situation and have good ball tracking skills and be elite at the catch point, Keon's there. And he has a great basketball background. He actually appeared in a few games, believe it or not, a few years ago at Michigan State for Tom Izzo on the basketball court, and he was really good, a high-level recruit there. And you can see with his box-out basketball skills, and especially in the end zone, he'll probably finish with 6 or 7, actually probably 7 or 8 more likely, even touchdowns, because he's just, you know, there. Run after catch, he's elite at that. He will be brought down from behind, though, like a few weeks ago against the Seahawks. Who was that 125 game he had? Against the Titans. And he was brought down twice from behind, or else he would have had 2 easy walk-in touchdowns. He's a high-level athlete. He's just not a burner, and his 40 time isn't, like, fast. It was, like, in the mid-4.6s, which is pretty bad for a receiver. But that's fine because he's a high-level athlete with his in midair acrobatics and stuff. So, yeah, Keon, 417 yards on just 22 receptions is just insane. And then Mac Hollins, it's kind of annoying how much he plays, but he keeps producing. So he has 12 receptions for 111 yards and 3 touchdowns. Apparently he's like arguably our best red zone threat. Actually, Keon probably is number 1, but he's right there with him. Mac Hollins at number 2 in terms of red zone threats. Mac Hollins is a phenomenal blocker. Phenomenal special teamer as well, but I didn't know he'd be this productive on offense and playing this much. Again, I said before the year, if we get 200 to 300 receiving yards, give or take, around there from Mac Hollins, I'll be satisfied with the signing. I'm already satisfied with the signing. It's just annoying how much he plays, and he's into Keon's time. So, yeah, but apparently he's arguably our best red zone threat. So, Amari Cooper, 5 receptions for 69 yards and a touchdown. I'm not including his Browns stats because that was the Deshaun Watson. There's no context. There's some bad context there, and who really cares? He's on the Bills now, so his Bills stats for 5 receptions for 69 yards and a touchdown. I think him and Keon can be those true X receivers, and Shakir in the slot, and then Kincaid, that true tight end. That is really potent offense, in my opinion. And Amari Cooper, he's only played 1 game at the Bills, but he already got a touchdown in that 1 game, and he's just going to get more comfortable. And he doesn't affect it. Like, obviously, he's going to touch the ball himself and get a ton of raw targets himself, but, like, you have to respect, if he's double teamed, then Keon Coleman will be in single coverage one-on-one with his physicality on the other side of the field. Or he'll open up more so underneath targets for Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid. So I really love what Amari Cooper can evolve through and unlock this offense even more. And then Curtis Samuel, isn't even worth mentioning because he's just been a total nothing burger. I'll explain it later when I evaluate the free agent class from Brandon Bean, but he's been a dud. 12 receptions for 92 yards. And, like, the human joystick mantra that he's known as, you can line up him anywhere, slot, outside backfield. The backfield stuff has only amounted to 3 carries for 6 freaking yards. Like, he has literally been a dud. So I gave the wide receiver position a B by far. To just recap quick, I love what Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman are doing. It's annoying how much Mac Hollins plays, but he's arguably our best red zone target. And Curtis Samuel has been just a total dud and nothing. And then Cooper is going to get more, Amari Cooper, that is going to get more and more comfortable with this offense and open up so much, not just for himself, but the other guys underneath and downfield with Keon Coleman. So B it is. Tight end, I'm really sad to say this because I thought Dalton Kincaid would for sure, get 100. He deserves 110 to 120 targets at least, at minimum, and he's only on pace for like 95 right now, like mid-90s, and that's just not good enough in my opinion. Not catches, just raw targets, like 95 targets. So Dalton Kincaid's stats this year are 32 receptions, 332 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He hasn't been terrible, but I think it's okay to say that he's been somewhat disappointing, and even in most extents, a lot disappointing. I just don't feel comfortable with, like, the lack of production with Dalton Kincaid. He's not having a sophomore slump because, again, he hasn't been terrible, but, like, he's not drawing nearly enough, like, respect with defenses. Like, I don't really understand it. And then Dawson Knox, he's chipped in 5 receptions for 102 yards and a touchdown. I say give up on the 12 personnel stuff, the 2 tight end packages, and it looks like they have. You drafted Dalton Kincaid. This is the one thing in time on Joe Brady. You drafted Dalton Kincaid for the sake of like, oh, we're so excited to do this 12 personnel, bigger packages. Oh, we're so excited to present 2 tight end sets. The NFL's transitioning with 12 and 13 personnel, and that's kind of been a disaster ever since you drafted him. After the first handful, 4 or 5 games, they've been 6 games this year. They totally abandoned it, which I honestly could care less about, because I said in the beginning, I don't want snaps and targets being taken away from Khalil Shakir out of the slot. If you're going to use Dalton Kincaid as a big slot, Dawson Knox as a more traditional tight end. So because of all the reasons I just said, because of the 2 tight end personnel stuff being a total disaster and Dalton Kincaid being pretty disappointing and Dawson Knox barely playing as it is, I'm going to give tight end a C+. And I really wanted to say tight end would be an absolute A, at minimum A- this year, but Dalton Kincaid hasn't been nearly as effective as he should and honestly would be at this point last year. So that's just my thoughts on it. His rookie year was by far better. And then Quentin Morris, as a third blocking tight end, he only has 1 catch, 2 yards, but that dude has a touchdown. He's a guy that will have a stat line of 10 catches and 2 touchdowns. He's random, extremely random. He'll just have 10 catches. You look up, and at the end of the year, oh yeah, 10 receptions and 2 touchdowns for Quentin Morris. When did that happen? And looking back, oh yeah, that's when that happened. So right around there, 10 catches and 2 touchdowns is what I'm expecting. Again, I have a really deep appreciation for Quentin Morris' UDFA out of, don't ask me his college, because I don't know. I could probably know that, but I don't. If I do, I can't recall. Sorry about that. But yeah, I think Quentin Morris could be a lot of teams' tight end too, and we just have so much tight end depth, even though they've been disappointing. So much tight end depth. He's our tight end 3, so I think he's a tight end 2 caliber player. And then this offensive line, they've been phenomenal. I'm gonna give it an A-. What's holding it back for me personally from being an A or even an A+ letter grading rating is because they've had quite a few more flags, a lot of illegal formations, false starts, ticky-tack stuff that they shouldn't be having. So I'm going to give it an A-, drop it down just a tad. But left tackle Deion Dawkins, he's been phenomenal. All-pro caliber year. Once again. Left guard David Edwards. And center Connor McGovern. I was kind of fearful of okay, how is this going to work? You cut Mitch Morse, and then you slide Connor McGovern over from starting left guard to starting center. And because you cut Mitch Morse and I'm moving McGovern to center, you bring up David Edwards from the bench and from that jumbo tight end role that they love so much and start him at left guard. But they've been ho-hum in a very good way. They've even better, but I say ho-hum because we haven't had to talk about him. And when offensive linemen, especially interior blobs like that, are not being talked about, that's a very, very good thing. And they've been excellent in my opinion. Right guard Osiris Torrance, he's been by far easily the worst out of our 5 starting offensive linemen this year, but he hasn't been terrible. He just had some trouble picking up some blocking schemes sometimes, especially in pass protection, but he can bounce back in that. He's not having the all-pro caliber year I thought he would, but he's a very good budding starting right guard in this league. I think he'll be a, maybe not superstar caliber, but maybe high-level starter category around there. And then right tackle Spencer Brown, I'm going to say I think he's second at minimum 13 all-pro this year. I really, really do. Who are the better tackles than him? Trent Williams of the 49ers, Penei Sewell of the Lions, Lane Johnson of the Eagles, Tristan Wirfs of the Bucks. That's the conversation he's in. This year, he's the 4th or 5th, at worst, 6th, not just right tackle, 6th best tackle in general this year. So I think he's really going to push and compete with those few guys for 3rd team All-Pro and that last All-Pro spot. I think he's been really, really nice. Okay, the 2 tackles, Dawkins and Brown, especially Brown with getting in some fights in the field and mixing it up a bit, which he's 6'8", freaking 311 pounds. He has a perfect 10 RAS score. 1 is, if you don't know, that means relative athletic score. 1 is horrible. 10 is perfect, phenomenal. He has a perfect 10 RAS score. I mean, it's great. And then as a 6th offensive lineman, they love this jumbo tight end role. As a 6th insert blocker, 6th offensive lineman, a quote-unquote hybrid jumbo tight end. We've had this with Tommy Doyle in the past. Bobby Hart has played this role most recently last year in 2023. It was David Edwards, who played this role, and like it serves well. Like they get a handful of snaps, and it serves well for the Bills' blocking schemes. So center guard Alec Anderson can play tackle on a pinch as well. I think he's a great reserve as a backup center, and he can play all 5 spots theoretically. So they love the jumbo 10 role. Then offensive tackle Ryan Vandermark. He was inactive, a healthy scratch for the first few weeks of the season, which Tyler Grable, who's on IR right now, probably will return in a few weeks. Probably not till after the bye week because he's just a reserve tackle at this point. But yeah, Ryan Vandermark, he's just like Alec Anderson in the UDFA. He can't really play right tackle. He's kind of a disaster there, so he's not a direct backup to Spencer Brown. And that's probably why they like Tyler Grable more, honestly, just because he can play both spots. But Ryan Vandermark, he's a decent enough direct backup to Deion Dawkins. I really like this top 7. And then even 8th, I think center Cedric Van Granger from Georgia, all that SEC experience, can be our starting center as soon as next year. If David Edwards for some reason walks in free agency and you kick Connor McGovern back to left guard, and Cedric Van Granger will probably compete and honestly probably win the job over Alec Anderson, but at least compete with them for the starting center prospects in 2025. And then center Will Clapp, when Tyler Gray was activated on FIR, Will Clapp's going to go. You don't need 4 centers on the roster with Connor McGovern, Alec Anderson, who they love a lot, as do I. Cedric Van Granger, who I love, maybe not right now, but as the future. And then Will Clapp, you don't need a 4th center, so he'll be cut, but he's been fine. He's just a break glass in case of emergency guy. He's just never been active for a single game this season, other than a couple back sweat elevations. But yeah, so I'm going to give outside line A-. I would give an A or even as high as a perfect A+ if they didn't have so many flags. That's holding them back just a bit. Ding them a bit for that. Defensive tackle, I'm not going to give them D because there's been some moments, but I'm going to give it a C-, man. They've all been really disappointing except for one. But yeah, they've all been, for the most part, really disappointing. I'm going to give it a C- because, like I said, there's been a few good run stuffing moments, but they've been really few and far between, man. So C- for defensive tackle group. Ed Oliver, 13 tackles, 1 sack, and 1 forced fumble. I say Ed Oliver's been disappointing this year. He just hasn't had nearly the impact he had last year. And people say, well, he's been fine. He's been okay. That's not good enough. Fine and okay is disappointing based off of last year. Based off of last year, just okay is disappointing this year. So that's really disappointing. Only 1 sack. And then Daquan Jones, 12 tackles, 2 sacks. He's known for being an elite run defender, and he's been a disaster against the run this year and can't really penetrate as well anymore with the pass rusher from the inside. And then Dwayne Carter, 9 tackles. I think he was outplaying Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones a lot of the time. Dare I say even damn near most of the time even. Excuse me. He had 9 tackles. He's come close on a couple sacks, but unfortunately, he's on IR right now. And then Austin Johnson, who he barely plays as is. He really only gets 20 to 25% of snaps per game on the defense side of the ball. That's fine, but he has 10 tackles and 1 interception, weirdly, randomly enough. And then Ilianku, who, he's not built like any of the defensive tackles on the board here on the Bills, per se. Just because he's much bigger than all of them and he's not severely undersized like most of them seem to be. And he's really awesome for the practice squad. And then Zion Logue, I don't really even know why he's on the team. And then we're just an hour or so before I hopped on here to record to give you guys this awesome show to present to you today that I was looking forward to a lot. We signed Jordan Phillips and signed Quentin Jefferson. Quentin Jefferson, I'm cool with. In 2020, he played nose tackle, and that was a miscast for him. He's a 3 technique, penetration style rusher from the inside and the interior, if you will. And the reason he was miscast as a nose tackle and had to play that out of necessity with the Bills in 2020 was, get ready for this name. This is going to be a blast from the past, but Star Lotulelei opted out because of the COVID, that weird whole COVID year there. So that's why. And then Jordan Phillips, I thought his last year in Buffalo was an absolute train wreck last year in 2023. For a 350-pound guy, he's a terrible run defender. He can barely penetrate anymore. He rarely ever shoots gaps. I'm really disappointed that they signed him to the active roster instead of the practice squad. Again, Quentin Jefferson I'm cool with. I'm not overly excited, but I'm excited enough for okay, man, yeah, do your thing, whatever. But Jordan Phillips, clogged up a roster spot for no reason. I would have given the final spot to Quentin Jefferson, honestly, but then to Elianku from the practice squad. Honestly, I'd take Elianku over, maybe not Quentin Jefferson, but over Austin Johnson, over Jordan Phillips, easily over Zion Logue. I just think he's the fourth best defensive tackle with now Quentin Jefferson in the mix, and that might speak to how weak and disappointing our defensive tackle room and group as a whole, specifically and respectively has been this year. But yeah, I'm gonna give it a C minus because for the most part it's been disappointing. Just for other than a few and far between, moments this year as a whole. So C minus for the defensive tackle room as a whole, and then defensive I'm gonna give it a B minus. To me, this has been really hit or miss, and they've all been disappointing in my opinion. Besides Greg Rousseau. Greg Rousseau's an absolute game wrecker. He has 33 tackles, 4.5 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. I'm cool with him. I'm fine. He had a stretch of 3 or 4 games this year early in the season where he totally disappeared after week 1 until week 4 or 5. But yeah. And then AJ Epinesa, I think it's okay to say he's been mildly disappointing because he only has 18 tackles and 4 sacks and 2 forced fumbles. Dawon Smoot is playing over him, and I think that's an issue. But Von Miller, he was off to a red-hot start. Then he got suspended for 4 games, and he was not very effective at all. But what do you expect coming off a suspension? 7 tackles and 3 sacks. I would love to see him play even more. And then Dawon Smoot was now hit on IR with a wrist injury. All the freaking wrist injuries on the Bills team. 12 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. He was playing over guys like AJ Epinesa mostly, but also Von Miller, and that's just ridiculous in my opinion. And then Casey Tuel, 11 tackles and 1 sack. These last 2 guys I want to lump together, so Casey Tuel and then Javon Solomon, who's recorded 5 tackles, 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble. I've seen a few flashes here and there, man, when Javon Solomon's been on the field. I know it's for the most part been garbage time, but he's made a few nice special teams tackles. If it were up to me personally, if I was not Brandon Beane because he doesn't make the in-game adjustments. If I was Sean McDermott and Bobby Babich, I would say, listen, I'm going to give all the snaps, the Casey Tuel snaps to Javon Solomon and see even more of those flashes. So I'm going to give it a B minus because they've all, to a degree, been disappointing besides Greg Rousseau. And Javon Solomon has popped a bit, some flashes here and there, but he just doesn't play nearly enough. But I'm going to give it a B minus. It's a very hit or miss pass rush. Whether it's organically rushing or just a blitz, throwing the kitchen sink at the opposing offensive line, they've been very hit or miss, so B. And then the linebacker room, man, I'm going to give a B. Obviously, no Matt Milano, but Terrell Bernard has obviously taken on more of a leadership role this year because of that. He's a very quiet guy, though, so I don't know how that will go. But 40 tackles and 1 interception. We haven't had the, huge splash plays nearly as much from Terrell Bernard as we did last year, evidenced by the only 1 interception. But he rarely gives up anything in coverage. He's a surefire tackler. He's one of the few players in the Bills defense that doesn't miss tackles, rarely if at all. So, and then Dorian Williams, Matt Milano's direct replacement this year at weak side linebacker, 84 tackles. I mean, he has racked them up, but that's what he's known for. He plays a physical, high energy, hair and fire style of football, and he's kind of dreadful against the pass. On obvious passing downs, he has to be taken out of the game. And he also has 1 forced fumble. Very physical player. And then Balin Spector, who's even worse than Dorian Williams in coverage. And Dorian Williams is already pretty terrible as it is, but 34 tackles and 1 sack. I think I would only have him as a special teams player. I think they'd like him more than anybody else in the world, though. And then 3 guys here that kind of Nicholas Morrow has been a free agency flop. Joe Andreessen, Buffalo Joe, and then Eddie Ulofoshio and Andreessen Ulofoshio for big special teams purposes, big special teams contributors, it seems, 4-face special teamers, all that, have clearly passed Nicholas Morrow on the depth chart. So I've been really impressed with Terrell Bernard, and then kind of mixed on Dorian Williams. Our depth is pretty lacking. So I'm going to give this a B for how they've performed through 9 weeks this year at the linebacker position as a whole. Corner, I'm going to give an A. Again, they've had a couple pass interference calls this year. They very rarely have had coverage busts, but they had a lot of them against the Dolphins. If they didn't have that game against the Dolphins in my mind where they had a lot of coverage busts, especially Kyrie Elam, I'm looking at you, and this would easily be an A+. Christian Benford, he better make an all-pro corner team. He's awesome. 34 tackles, 4 pass deflections, 1 interception. He doesn't give up anything. opposing quarterbacks and teams and offensive coordinators don't even scheme it up to target the guy. He's unreal. And then Rasul Douglas playing off of Christian Benford, 36 tackles, 1 forced fumble, and 5 pass deflections. That's 2 really underrated starters. And obviously, Rasul Douglas is a ball hawk, hasn't recorded interception yet this year, but he's dropped like 3 of them. So 1 or 2 of them being clear pick sixes that he's dropped. Taron Johnson, he is the key cog that makes this defense go. He's by far the veteran of this defense because Matt Milano is technically not in there, sadly and unfortunately enough. So Taron Johnson, 28 tackles. Sorry about that. 28 tackles, 1 forced fumble, 2 pass deflections, 1 interception. It's nice to see him get that interception, his hands on the ball after not having an interception all of last year in 2023. He does so much well in the field. He can line up as a split zone, hybrid slot safety. His true position is slot corner, buzz down at linebacker, and picks up running backs and tight ends in coverage. And he is one hell of a physical tackler. I love Taron Johnson. And then Jamarcus Ingram, who has popped for me this year quite a bit. 7 tackles, 4 pass deflections, 2 interceptions, 1 pick six, 1 touchdown off of those. He's been forced to play safety because of injuries. He's probably best at slot corner. He can play outside corner really well too. He's kind of like a lesser version, if you will, of Cam Lewis. Funny enough, both UB undrafted kids products. They're not kids anymore. Both UB undrafted guys products there. So that's really cool to see. And then Kyrie Elam, 9 tackles and 1 pass deflection. He's not a boss, but every time he's been there, he's been okay at best. And then Brandon Codrington, who never plays DB, throw him in there in garbage time, fine. But he's been awesome as a kick and punt returner. Like he's almost sprung 2 or 3, a few of them at least, a minimum for touchdowns. His decision making is really good. When to kneel it down and when to not. When to accept the touchback and when to bring it out of the end zone. So, yeah, he's had great ball security with his hands, especially against the Dolphins. He had that really nice 1 punt return. It was a terrible punt by the Dolphins, punter Jake Bailey, but it was good. So I'm going to give this an A, damn near an A+, but A is fine. Safety, B. Honestly, going into this season, I thought it would be a C. I think people thought, including myself, that would be a C, C+ at best. I want to say, though, I don't want to brag and toot my own horn here, but I effectively kind of predicted this safety situation. Like, when Mike Edwards was signing back in March, I said, that signing means nothing. He's since been released, and Damar Hamlin will be this team's starter opposite Taylor Rapp starting safety in 2024, and I was right on all of that. Now, Damar has been hit or miss, but Taylor Rapp here, like, credit to him. Last year, as you know, I had a lot of critiques on Taylor Rapp, and I was kind of lukewarm on the idea of like him being our starting safety for the foreseeable and hopefully down the road. I was kind of nervous about that, but he has 43 total tackles in the year and 4 pass deflections. His coverage, like he's a very physical tackler. Like his best football is played near the line of scrimmage as a downhill thumper, as a downfield hammer, if you will, theoretically. But like he's been phenomenal in coverage as well, which I would not be saying at this point last year. So, yeah. Damar Hamlin, I think he's been way better than people have thought. I think he gets too much hate. Yes, he's been hit or miss for some stretches, but I think he gets way too much hate. 57 total tackles. And then, sorry, lost my spot. There's a lot here. 57 total tackles and 5 pass deflections and 2 interceptions. People say, oh, those 2 interceptions were in garbage time. They just floated into his arms. Okay, it's still an interception for a guy that went through what he went through with the whole cardiac arrest and everything. So, yeah, and then Cam Lewis, who's just a more versatile piece, just like Jamarcus Ingram, slot corner, safety, outside corner. He hasn't played that since college. So I think his best play is at safety personally. But, yeah, I count him as a safety at this point. He has 45 tackles and 2 pass deflections. He misses a few more tackles than I would like him to, but in filling for Taron Johnson for those 4 games he missed, he was really good. And then Cole Bishop, who's become a really nice special teams contributor and made a few nice plays on special teams as a 4-phase special teamer, it seems now. 16 tackles and 1 pass deflection. And in garbage time, he's shown some flashes, a few flashes here and there. So I'm going to give the safety position a B. Just to recap the secondary, I'm giving corner an A, and then safety a B. I think safety's been one of the more bigger surprises. And then I'll throw in kicker and punting here. Kicker, B-. Tyler Bass, he is 15 of 18 on field goals, which is right around 83%. It's a little below average for the number 6 highest paid kicker in the league, but he redeemed it obviously with the 61-yarder this past Sunday in Orchard Park, New York, against the Miami Dolphins. I was really excited for that, as you could tell. If you have not watched my recap show, go watch that. But if you did, I was very excited and happy for Tyler Bass. He was absolutely crying and very emotional after the game in the locker room, joined the prayer circle on the field with other Bills teammates and all that. But and then 90% extra points, in my opinion, it's pretty simple. A kicker should be always 100% extra points. Like, how do you miss an extra point? It's an extra point, but yeah, B minus. He's improved as the season went on. And then punter, C, like I've never said by Sam Martin. He's had a couple terrible punts this year, but I've never said, oh my, that was a great punt from Sam Martin. Like, he doesn't necessarily hurt us, but he doesn't help us with field position either. He's a very replaceable punter. He's just kind of So I'll give Sam Martin the putting position a flat grade of a C. Position group, we're not done. A lot more to get into. Position group I'm most satisfied with this entire season. It's far and away the running back position. I love our superstar starter in James Cook, and I love our reserves in Ty Johnson, or randomly gets touchdowns here and there, but also great blocker and pass pro. And then Ray Davis, just I appreciate so much of what he means to this team as a downfield thumper and in between the tackles runner, and just runs with physicality, like he hurts the ground when he runs, as they say. So I'm most satisfied far and away, like cleared away running back position. Position I'm most disappointed in. This was pretty easy for me as well. I could say tight end, but I just think like Dalton Kincaid's just got to get going more often earlier in games as well. I'm going to go defensive line for position I'm most disappointed in, and that means defensive tackle and defensive end, but defensive tackle especially, but both of them pass rush other than Greg Rousseau. Even Greg Rousseau at more times than not. Decent amount of times have been pretty hit or miss. And then defensive tackle, run defense has been a disaster. Like Daquan Jones, especially Adel Alver, have been highly, severely disappointing this year. Elianku's had some flashes, but he's a practice squad defensive tackle. And Quentin Jefferson might help that a little bit. Jordan Phillips definitely is that. So defensive line, that includes end and defensive tackle. Most So once again, to recap, most position group I'm most satisfied with halfway through the season, through 9 games, that is. That would be far and away the running back position. I love all of them. And then position group I'm most disappointed in, again, it's unfortunate to say, but far and away defense line. That means pass rush, defensive end, interior, defensive tackle, like all of them. And then I have to touch on some players in the same vein as the question that I just proposed. Most surprising player halfway through the season. This guy's just a reserve. Cornerback Jamarcus Ingram. His versatility, he's becoming the new Cam Lewis, 4-phase special teamer. He has 2 picks against the Dolphins week 2, filling in for Taron Johnson, and a couple safeties going down and getting nicked up in that game. I love Jamarcus Ingram. He's been kind of boiling, if you will, in the practice squad the last couple of years. And now, like, he's seized his opportunity, if you will. Most disappointing player after the season, this is not an argument or debate. It's Curtis Samuel. He's been a total dud, a total nothing burger. Just out of my mind from going forward. Players I want more from. These aren't necessarily players that have been terrible. They're just, I say Curtis Samuel's most disappointing. He's tied with that Oliver. He hasn't done anything. And being just okay is highly disappointing based off of last year. And I don't think he's been just okay. He's been at best. And that's putting lightly. Players I want to see more from this season. I don't mean pure playing time. These guys haven't been terrible, but I want to see them pop more on screen when I watch the games and on tape and all that fun stuff. Tight end Dalton Kincaid. Get him going intermediate downfield more. Defensive tackle Daquan Jones. He's been a terrible run defender this year. Defensive end A.J. Epinesa. 1, he's not playing enough. And 2, when he is playing, he's not like showing many flashes. And then defensive end Von Miller coming off the suspension after a red hot start. So let's get back to that. So head coach Sean McDermott. I'm going to rate the coaching staff now. I think Sean McDermott gets an A-, for all the reasons I will present to you right now. Things McDermott has done well that I have written down here in my notes. Aggressiveness on fourth downs. This gets better and better every single year, especially over the last few. This year, though, he's going for it 4th and 2 without hesitation. 4th and 3 without hesitation. Fun fact, the Buffalo Bills, number 1 in the league, the Buffalo Bills are perfect on fourth down. The Buffalo Bills are 9 of 9. Yes, I'll repeat again. 9 of 9 on fourth down in the league this year. That is by far number 1 in the league. That's awesome. Another thing I really love McDermott for, keeping his team ready for anything through a ton of roster transition. Think about the defense alone, moving on from Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Trey White, Matt Milano going down for this season for like a second straight year. So it's really encouraging stuff, really. Guys that have stepped up as well. And then the offensive side, I don't count Gabe Davis as transition, but your whole receiver room is transition from getting rid of Gabe Davis, getting rid of Stephon Diggs, having Trent Sherfield leave, having Deontay Hardy leave. All new except Khalil Shakir, and I think that he's done a phenomenal job of guiding his team through that transition. And then bouncing back after losses. This is like a yearly tradition at this point. Bills will have a 2-game lull where they lose 2 games early, midseason, then snap back and bounce right back and look dominant for the next handful of weeks. It happened to the Ravens. It got blown out by, and then Texans. And against the Texans, that leads me into things that I'm disappointed in. McDermott has done poorly. Poor in-game management times. Like, this is just the ticky-tack stuff that he still struggles with. Like, sometimes he challenges stuff that he should challenges plays with the challenge tag that he has no business challenging. And then sometimes he's too scared and doesn't challenge plays that he absolutely should be challenging. And then clock management sometimes and timeout management sometimes he struggles with still a little. He gets more often than not, unfortunately, out-coached late in games in high leverage situations. Hello, Houston game. I'm talking to you. Like, that was really bad management. So I'm going to give A- for all the reasons I just explained with Sean McDermott. And now for the 2 coordinators. First, I'm going to grade Joe Brady on an overall scale, just like I did McDermott. Joe Brady gets an Okay, sorry, I'm back. My Wi-Fi was going in and out there. Hopefully that wasn't a big deal to you. But like I was saying, I've loved Joe Brady in the balanced attack. It's split down the middle between run and pass, pretty much. And then another thing Joe Brady has done well, good use of pre-snap motion, and also he's presented to us a lot of nice different formations that we're not used to seeing from the Buffalo Bills. Things Brady has done poorly that I've been disappointed in him for, has failed to get Curtis Samuel going. And what confuses me and puzzles me the most about this is he is known. Sorry about that. He is known to have proven success with Curtis Samuel in the past. With the Panthers, he had about 800-something yards receiving and 300-something yards rushing with Teddy Bridgewater in 2020. I don't know why that hasn't manifested anything with Josh Allen, but he hasn't schemed him up properly. Hasn't utilized Josh Allen's legs nearly enough, in my opinion. He also hasn't utilized play action nearly enough, in my opinion, as Josh Allen's deadly on it. So for all those pros and cons, I'm going to give Joe Brady a solid A-, just like Sean McDermott. And then Bobby Babich, Up and down, mostly up, but some down things. I'm going to give a solid, just straight arrow B for him. Things Babbage has done well. Unlikely heroes have stepped up. Obviously, Matt Milano out for the season. Taylor Rapp missed a game. Taron Johnson missed a big chunk of games with 4 games in a row earlier in the season, dating back to a handful of weeks ago. So Dorian Williams has stepped up for Matt Milano. Jamarcus Ingram has stepped up for Taylor Rapp and Taron Johnson. Cam Lewis has stepped up for Taron Johnson. There's a lot of unlikely heroes on this team, and I applaud Bobby Badger for getting his guys in those right situations. And then knowing when to put different guys in spots as alignments when you should, specifically buzzing down some DBs like Taron Johnson or Cam Lewis to take in place of Dorian Williams on obvious passing situations and obvious passing downs, just because Dorian Williams is a liability and he's finally realizing that. So, and then Bills defense, this is also a huge plus to me. Bills defense rarely has coverage busts. Like they had a lot against Miami. That was mostly Kyrie Elam, unfortunately, but they rarely have coverage busts. So, yeah. But that also goes into what Babbage has done poorly. Lack of aggressiveness with blitzes when they're absolutely needed. Like he'll blitz when it's not needed, and then he'll not blitz, refuse to blitz when it is needed, absolutely is needed. So it's kind of like an opposite effect, if you will. He does it at very inopportune times and doesn't time it right at all, in my opinion. And your DBs like Cam Lewis, Taron Johnson, arguably one of, if not their best Taylor Rapp attribute is as downfield hammers, blitzing from the line of scrimmage, and then disguise blitzes, delayed blitzes with Terrell Bernard as well. So that needs to uptick a lot. He refuses to present heavy boxes to opposing rushing attacks. It's good that they rarely have coverage busts and prevent big plays over the top. But yeah, I don't know. They're not gonna all of a sudden leave Nick a nickel and dime style defense, and then they're not gonna structurally change what they do with nickel and dime defense, and then all of a sudden present all these heavy boxes. So the light boxes thing will stay, which annoys me a lot. And then I want to check in on the 2024 free agency class. This is an F. What a disaster. QB, Mitchell Trubisky, that's whatever. Backup. Wide receiver, Matt Collins. Okay, he annoying plays more. That's probably a hit. Curtis Samuel, total dud, not a hit. MVS, total dud. Now in the Saints, and they're miserable. Center, Will Clapp, total dud. Practice squad, healthy scratch, inactive. Defensive end Dewan Smoot, he was playing too much when he was healthy. He had some flashes, but now he's on IR. That looks bad. Defensive tackle Austin Johnson, total dud. Linebacker Nicholas Morrow, he's now a healthy scratch. Safety Mike Edwards, he had a poor attitude and he requested to be his release. Apparently, he had a poor effort in practice and wasn't happy. He thought he was just gonna stroll in and be automatic for sure day one starter. And that he was basically upset. I heard that he had to compete with Damar Hamlin, which is just stupid. It's the NFL. You should welcome competition, but that's an F. Brandon Beane, I'm sorry. I usually love the signings and draft picks you make over the handful of years you've been here. Eighth year now, 7 off seasons, but it's an F. Matt Collins is an only one that's a hit there, and he hasn't even been phenomenal per se. So yeah, that's just I don't know what to say about that free agent class. And you can't really move on from Curtis Samuel just because there would be a ton of dead money there, and there's a lot of guaranteed money for next year as well. But on the more positive side, let's check in the draft class. 2 round 2 picks. Wide receiver Keon Coleman and then safety Cole Bishop. I've been highly impressed with Keon Coleman. Cole Bishop has turned to a nice special teams contributor. Round 3, defensive tackle Dwayne Carter. He was becoming a legit rotational piece and a for sure starter one day. Round 4, running back Ray Davis. Round 5, center Cedric Van Granger. I think as early as next year in 2025, he could push to be the starting center. Round 5, Eddie Lufosio. Okay, not really much. Round 5, defense on Von Solomon. I want to see a lot more snaps. Maybe not a lot, but a bit more snaps for him. Give him all the Casey Toole snaps, and we'll be fine. Round 6, tackle Tylen Grable, who they really liked over Ryan Vandermark, but he's on IR right now. Round 6, corner Daquan Hardy. I was pretty shocked when he didn't make the initial 53-man roster. So, yeah. And then round 7, guard Travis Clayton, International Pathway Program. That's whatever. These top 4 really stick out to me, though. I'm going to give this a B because Keon is a great contributor. Cole Bishop, great special teams contributor. Dwayne Carter, legit rotational piece. And Ray Davis, like a legit, like 1A, 1B situation with the running backs, with him and Cook, respectively. So, yeah. And then the updated record prediction. I want to look at the second half of the season. We're currently 7-2. Week 10, we're at the Colts. I think that's a win, although it could be a sneaky trap game. Okay, now we're 8-2. Chiefs, we have them at home. We always beat them every regular season. Okay, 9-2. 49ers and Sunday Night Football, they look very up and down, shaky right now with all their injuries and stuff. 10-2. At Rams, huge West Coast trip, and the Rams are becoming hot at the right time. I think they'll just be blazing hot at this point. 11-2. 10-3, I mean. At Lions, just they scare me. Like, they have everything clicking right now. They're throttling teams, so 10-4. Patriots, these three are pretty simple. Patriots at home, 11-4. Jets at home, 12-4. I think we'll win that easily. At Patriots, they'll just give up at this point. Week 18, 13-4. I think we do finish 13-4. At worst, the floor here is 11 wins. At worst, 11-6. At best, 13-4. Some of these games could go either way. Like, at Rams, we could win if everything goes right. 49ers, we could lose. Chiefs, we could lose. So that's why I say floor is 11-6. Ceiling at our absolute best is 13-4. And then teams that can still make the playoffs in the AFC. What does the landscape for the entire AFC look like right now? Well, let me tell you. Chiefs, 1 seed, 8-0. They're a lock to make playoffs. 2 seed right now is the Bills, 7-2. They're a lock. 3 seed right now is Steelers, 6-2. They're a lock. 4 seed is Texans right now, 6-3. They're a lock. They're not phenomenal, but like I said, they're kind of shaky right now, but the AFC South is an abysmal division. 5 seed Ravens at 6-3. They're a lock. The 5 seed will either be the Steelers or Ravens because the second place team in the AFC North. The 6 seed right now is the Chargers at 5-3. 7 seed right now is the Broncos at 5-4. And then you have these couple teams that are fighting. Colts, 8 seed, 4-5. Bengals, 9 seed, 4-5. I think there's 5 locks, obviously, whatever order you want to say. Chiefs, Bills, Ravens/Steelers, Texans, and then Ravens/Steelers. And then I think 6 and 7 seed will be Chargers and Bengals, whatever order. I just don't think the Colts with Joe Flacco, that magic's gone. And then the Broncos, like with a rookie quarterback, I don't think that's going to last forever either. So I know there was a lot in a very eventful episode, but I wanted to have a well-crafted episode for you guys, and just like last year, have a mid-season check-in, if you will. We reviewed a lot today. Again, sorry about the Wi-Fi going down thing. I hope it didn't distract you too much, but yeah. I really appreciate you guys for tuning in today. You can follow me personally on Twitter at @AWineconnect13. You can follow the show on Twitter at AroundSlice. You can, of course, watch or listen to this podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get favorite podcasts. Whatever pod platform you're on, we're happily on there. And then last thing, please help me get to 50 subscribers. Help me get to the big 5-0 by the end of the season this year. The growth for this podcast would be very, very much appreciated. I know you guys can do it, so let's get to the big 5-0. Anyways, I will be back in 2 days from now on Friday, November 8th for the regularly scheduled programming and the Bills-Colts, that being the Bills-Colts preview show. Can't wait for that. I will see you then. This was a really fun episode today. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for supporting as always. See you in the next one.